my name is Maywoods, and I'm the ILCOR member at EKU's Division of Natural Areas. And I'm back at Maywoods, and I have the manager here at Maywoods, Mr. Homer Strong, and he's going to give us an introduction of what we're going to be doing today.
Thank you, Mahala. Welcome to Maywoods. Maywoods is one of three of the Division of Natural Areas at Eastern Kentucky University's natural area. 1,700 acre, primarily forested land, and today we're going to be going out into the forest to look at some of the common trees that you may find here at Maywoods, and look at their characteristics, identifying features. We'll look at the leaf primarily to help us identify it and discuss some of those identifying features for the educational purposes. With that said, are we ready to start?
Yep, let's go find our first tree.
Great. So the white oak is, again, one of the most common oaks at Maywoods, and it's in the white oak group, and there's two different groups. There's a red oak group and a white oak group. The white oak group has smooth margins and includes many different species of oaks. The red oak group, which we'll look at later probably, has spines along the margins. And some oaks have lobes, others have an entire leaf. Any oak, all oaks, can be identified by the buds. All oaks have what we call a cluster of buds at the tip of the stem. So without leaves, you should be able to identify the oak tree by looking at the buds. Here we have a Mockernut hickory. All hickories have compound leaves, and they're situated along the stem alternately, opposed to opposite. Again, they all have compound leaves, and this is a leaf. These are leaflets. So this entire portion here is the compound leaf. Mockernut hickories typically have 7 to 9 leaflets, and again they're arranged alternately on the stem. So if you're looking at identifying, once you identify it as a hickory, that being it has a compound leaf arranged alternately on the stem, then you look at the number of leaflets, and then on this particular hickory, this is the reason it's identified as a mockernut, is the stems are very hairy, tomatose, which means hairy. So this would be a mockernut hickory. The two hickories here at Maywoods that have 5 leaflets per leaf would be a pignut hickory or a shagbark hickory. So once again, another way to identify and distinguish between the hickories. Different leaves on this individual tree. This tree has needles, which does the same job. Its function is to conduct photosynthesis, just as all leaves on trees. So these here we call leaves or needles, and this is a Virginia or scrub pine, common name. It's one of 4 pines that's native to Kentucky. We'll probably be looking at another one in a bit, but this one is again the scrub pine. To identify it, it has 2 needles per cluster, and they're typically twisted. again, it's evergreen or coniferous versus deciduous. Pine trees are coniferous. Evergreen is a term that's used. They lose their needles or their leaves, but they just don't lose them all at once. So they appear to be green throughout the year, if in fact they're alive. Deciduous trees lose their leaves each year in the fall, and then grow them back in the spring. So I mentioned the other, that there's 4 pines native to Kentucky, this being the scrub pine. Another one we'll look at that also has 2 needles per cluster, and here at Maywoods it's common as well. It's the shortleaf pine. And one of the differences, one of the distinguishing characteristics of the scrub pine and the shortleaf pine, as far as ID in them, is the bark is typically an easier way to identify them because many times you don't see a needle close to the ground, or at least like this, that you can reach, and the bark is very distinguishable. It's very unique on each tree. Let's go look at the bark of the Virginia pine and also look at the shortleaf pine. The 2 pines that are most common in Maywoods, the bark is a good identifying feature. This here is the scrub pine or Virginia pine, and as you can tell, the bark is flaky, rough appearance, opposed to the shortleaf pine, in which we'll take a look at in a moment, and then compare the two. And there's, once you see the two side by side, or learn the characteristics of the bark, they're really easily identified by just the bark. As I mentioned earlier, here we have a shortleaf pine. And if you can notice, the barks are in platelets, like large plates, individual plates. Okay, here is another compound leaf, and identifying this one, again, if you go look at compound, and again, to identify that it's a compound, all leaves have a bud at the base of their leaf. So if you look here, there's a bud at the base of the leaf. So this would be, and there's nothing on these leaflets. So that tells me that this entire structure here is a leaf. So again, another identifying factor of a compound leaf. Now, as we looked at the hickory, we saw it was a compound leaf, and it was arranged on the stem alternately. Here we have a compound leaf that's arranged on the stem opposite. So the opposite arrangement indicates that it is a ash tree. At Maywoods, this is the only compound tree with compound leaves that has opposite arrangement on the stems. The Kentucky state tree. It's a tulip tree, also known as white poplar, P-O-P-L-A-R. And it's a state tree. It has very uniquely shaped leaves. The buds of this tree are easily identified We can't really see it here. Well, maybe. They're flat. I recall in dendrology class it's been described as a duckbill bud, kind of flat, as you can see there. So this is a tulip tree. It has simple leaves, and they're arranged on the stem alternately. Here's an interesting tree when we're looking at trees to identify by their leaves. If you look at this one, it could possibly confuse you if you weren't familiar with it. This individual tree has 3 different shapes of leaves. It has an entire leaf. It has leaves that are that look like a mitten here, and it also has leaves that have 3 lobes, or some people say it looks like a glove. This is a sassafras. It has simple leaves, and they're arranged on the stem alternately. And this tree has, you can kind of scratch the stem. It has a root beer odor, and it's actually the roots of this tree historically have been used to make a tea or root beer flavored drink. So this is a very common understory tree at Maywoods typically. This tree is another example of a coniferous tree here at Maywoods, and this is a eastern hemlock. It's somewhat unusual to find hemlock in this area, but there's a couple of stands here at Maywoods that are somewhat significant. So this gives us a good example of the hemlock, eastern hemlock. And you can see that the needles or the leaves are different than those of the pine tree that we discussed earlier. And as the pine trees do, the hemlock have cones, or their seeds are in cones, like most evergreen.
So those were some characteristics that you could use to identify trees at Maywoods. Thank you so much for watching, and we really hope you enjoyed the video.